First of all, I just think it's very important for all of us to realize that every kid is worth fighting for. Every kid that we work with is worth giving our best when it comes to our time, talent, treasure, or whatever sacrifice that we need to make. Often, I think we don't realize that in every kid's life, God has a plan. A kid's life is like a puzzle. And if you think about a puzzle, there's a lot of pieces. And the question is, what piece are you? Sometimes when we get these kids, we may be at the beginning of putting the puzzle together. And when you think about a puzzle at the beginning, it's not that attractive. You may not know the full picture or the purpose. But the one thing about God is, as you get closer and closer to that end, the purpose in these kids' lives start becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. But the question we must ask ourselves, are we a significant piece to that puzzle? And that's all we can be. None of us are the Alpha Omega or the beginning to the end in the lives of these kids. All we are is just a significant piece to that puzzle. And we must ask ourselves, are we trying to be the savior in the lives of our kids? In all honesty, there's only one savior. There's Jesus Christ. The only role we can have is preparing our kids for their purpose, not trying to save them. If you think about it, when Jesus was going to the cross to suffer, what did Peter attempt to do? He attempted to try to save Jesus from any pain, suffering, anguish. But that wasn't part of God's plan. What did Jesus say to Peter? Get behind me, Satan, because you do not know the things of God. The question is, in an attempt to save our kids, are we playing the role of the devil? Because sometimes the things that our kids have to go through in order to have that purpose, in order to fulfill God's plan, we have to let them go through some suffering. We have to let them go through some challenges and some obstacles. And I'm a living testimony that it works. Been born out of wedlock to teenage parents. Mother gave me up the day I was born. Father murdered. Raised in a dysfunctional family. 12 uncles and aunts. Exposed to drugs, sex, alcohol at an early age. 1 meal a day was considered a good day. Age 7, removed from my home. Went through foster care system. Unfortunately, my experience in the foster care system wasn't a great experience. I was abused physically, mentally, and emotionally. I can remember being left in the basement overnight as a form of punishment. Not a finished basement, it was cold, cobwebs, dirty. Sometimes with dogs. And I remember banging on the door, just begging for them to let me out. Promising that I wouldn't do whatever I did again. But long story short, went through those 3 different foster homes, became angry, frustrated, mad, questioning everybody. Why am I here? Why me? And then eventually I went through a residential treatment facility. Instead of for them looking for what was right, it seemed like everybody was looking for what was wrong. My psychiatrist, my psychologist, my youth workers. I was labeled with a learning disability, behavior disorder, ADD, you name it. I was medicated, taking 400 milligrams of Thorazine hauled off 4 times a day. Came in as the most athletic kid. Now I'm just sitting in one spot, just drooling on myself. Couldn't control the muscles in my face. And again, I was asking myself, why me? Went from 95 pounds to 135 pounds within 30 days as a side effect of the medication. Placed me on a psych ward twice. Tested me for childhood schizophrenia, retardation, you name it. Got kicked out of that facility. They tried to replace my family with an affluent suburban family. And not realizing and trying to help me, you was hurting me. Because guess what? No matter how difficult my family was, I loved them. And they was constantly telling me my family wasn't nothing. Left that facility. They put me in a state hospital for a year. Been in a padded room, straitjackets, leather restraints. I can remember getting up every day. I would dress as if I was going somewhere. And they kept telling me, where you think you're going? I was told I'll be dead in jail by the time I was 18. Like my father, who was shot to death when I was 10. Why me? Why am I going through all these things? Questioning God. I grew up religious. Sometimes we assume our kids don't have any exposure to the Bible. I knew the 23rd Psalms. I can't tell you how many pair of socks and awards I received by just quoting scriptures in Bible studies. But guess what? I had no personal relationship with Christ. It was just an exercise. Because all the people that was interacting in my life, it seemed like they was more concerned about what they wanted me to do instead of who I was as a person. And so I left that state facility. Then I ended up going through 8 different group homes. I ended up going to the largest youth facility for young men in Jackson County, kicked out of there. Then they sent me to the largest state facility for boys, kicked out. Instead of looking for again what was right, it was always what's wrong. And I learned something too, and this is something we can't do with our kids. We cannot focus on their past and replacing all the energy and passion of focusing on their future. I tell youth all the time, your past should only be used if it can be help someone. But all your other energy needs to be used moving forward. See, the people didn't look at me and see a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. They saw somebody that was going to be incarcerated or be dead or in jail by the time I was 18. And that was it. Because of the color of my skin, because of my family background, or my family dynamics, or just where I lived. And we have to see the God in these kids. We cannot see the things that they've been through. And so here I am, now I'm 18 years old, 6'4", 220 pounds. All they saw in me was my ability to play basketball. And that was it. And that's what they sent me home to do. Basically, the system gave up on me. That was it. Ended up staying with an aunt that was addicted to drugs and alcohol. Thank God she took me in, so I needed a place to stay. I thought the worst was behind me. Enrolled in school and played basketball like I was told, and excelled, had 3 full ride scholarships offered my way. But guess what? I was more comfortable going to jail than I was college because I didn't even know what college was. I turned down 3 full ride scholarships out of ignorance. I decided to go to the Army because I was used to people telling me what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I figured at least now I'll be getting paid. Because what most people didn't know, when I was living with my aunt, I knew something that most adults know well. Learned something. And that's how to look good on the outside, but was all messed up on the inside. See, everybody thought I was spoiled because I dressed nice. But they didn't know that every night I was boiling water until 2 o'clock in the morning just to take a hot bath because we didn't have a hot water tank. They didn't know that my diet my whole senior year was milk and cereal. My aunt was selling food stamps for drugs. They didn't know I was walking miles to the furthest laundromat. They didn't know I was boiling water until 2 o'clock in the morning just to take that hot bath. It was a struggle. And I didn't tell them because I didn't think they cared. Long story short, passed a written and physical exam to go to the Army. The next day, got out to celebrate with one of my friends. Got in a confrontation with starting point guard on my basketball team. And that's why I ended up in a wheelchair. He shot me 3 times. But my life wasn't over. Because again, God had something in store. Everything I thought was a burden ended up being a blessing. Because God was preparing me. I always tell people the only time you're disabled is when you're operating outside the will of God. Because God has a way of preparing you for what he's calling you to do. Even if that means disabling you. You're still prepared to do what he's calling you to do. So these kids we're working with, we have to look at what God is preparing them for. Not necessarily what we think they're needing. Thank you.